Good morning, everyone. It is good to see you all this morning. Good to see some returning faces, some regular faces, some just good to see faces here in the Lord with the Lord's Church in this building. It has certainly been a week. It is, of course, our regular Weather with Caleb section, I guess, but it has certainly been a week. We thought we were getting summer again, up to 70s, and then the very next day we dropped about 30 degrees. So Wisconsin had to remind us, no, you have no idea what the weather's going to be like. And then we get our first snow last night. Yeah, that was last night. I feel like yesterday feels like a month ago. I don't know. It's just so distinctly different that I feel like, yeah, it has to be at least a month in between. But nope. One day we're 70s, now we're getting snow. So it's beautiful to see out there. It's sad to see summer officially go. Now that I've said something, it'll be 70s in 2 weeks. But for now, we're welcoming winter. So again, it's wonderful to be with y'all on this Sunday morning on the Lord's Day to learn about His Word. And this morning, we're going to continue our study of Isaiah. We're going to be in chapter 31, if you want to go ahead and turn to that. A quick little recap. Last week, we studied chapters 25 and 26, talking about more praising the Lord, but also Him basically swallowing up death and removing that shroud, as we said, the veil that separates us from God, the veil that separates us from each other, the shroud that clouds our mind, clouds our hearts and our judgment and how we go about following the Lord's word. So that was kind of our main theme for last week. And now we start in chapter 31. And like I say every week, I encourage you to read these in-betweens. Obviously, the book, study book, has its purposes for going chapters to chapters because it hits the main points. Just some quick run-throughs of what's in between. Chapter 27 is talking about how the Lord will deliver Israel from all this punishment as soon as they turn back to the Lord, of course, that there will be no more idols, no more false gods, that once they turn back, that all those who are in exile, the Israelites, will be made successful again, will be uplifted by the Lord. The next chapter, he talks about woe to the leaders of the countries that are now attacking Israel, woe to Ephraim, specifically the leaders of Israel, the northern kingdom, who led their kingdom into ruin by all of the false practices that they partook in. And then chapter 29, woe to David's city. Again, just saying that you are the chosen people. This is the city of David, and yet here we are, and we're being attacked by Assyrians, we're being oppressed, we're being attacked, and all of this has been brought about by not following God's word. And then the last chapter before we get into our main studies is woe to an obstinate nation. Woe to an obstinate children, declares the Lord, to those who carry out plans that are not mine. And again, it's same song, 15th verse at this point in Isaiah is, you are not following my plans. I keep giving you chances to turn back to my plans, and yet you keep getting focused on these worldly things. That's not my plan. And here we're going to have a little bit more of that once we get into chapter 31. But we're going to mention a specific instance, because through this whole siege that Assyria is laying upon the Israelite kingdom and the Judean kingdom has been going on, and it's been bad. The Israelites have felt the strain, and yet they've sat there and they've just tried to make their walls stronger. They've tried to get more weapons. They've tried to build up all these physical barriers between themselves and the Assyrians, and this whole time Isaiah is telling them, no, you need to rely on the God that built the original walls. You need to rely on the God that put this land into your control, that gave you the power to go into that land. And yet here you are, tearing down the houses and the temples that the Lord built for you, and you're using it to build up your own walls. And now there is what almost seems to be a moment of brevity, for the Israelites, we see that in the course of history, during this siege, the Egyptians, who have not been a fan of the Assyrians because the Assyrians have basically taken over being the world superpower as far as having the strongest military, and have pushed the Egyptians back to their borders, have started taking over more land, have really kind of made the Egyptian empire seem a little secondary. And so, as we're going to read, as is God's plan, the Egyptians take up arms and start attacking the Assyrian border while they're distracted with besieging Jerusalem. And here, we're going to read exactly what the Israelites' reaction to this historical happening is going to be. And it's not very good that the chapter starts out with woe. Usually not a good sign. So let's read why Isaiah is giving woe to the people he's speaking to. So let's read just verses 1 through 3 of chapter 31. Verses 1 through 3.
Woe to those who go down to Egypt for help and rely on horses, who trust in chariots because they are many, and in horsemen because they are very strong, but who do not look to the Holy One of Israel, nor seek the Lord. Yet he also is wise and will bring disaster, and will not call back his words, but will arise against the house of evildoers, and against the help of those who work iniquity. Now the Egyptians are men and not God, and their spirits are flesh and not spirit. When the Lord stretches out his hand, both he who helps will fall, and he who is helped will fall down. They all will perish together.
Thank you. So, the Israelites are seeing about the fact that Egypt is attacking the people who are attacking them. And what do they think? They think, oh boy, yeah, the Egyptians are coming to help us. The Egyptians are our friends. The Egyptians, as if they've completely forgotten. When was the last time the Israelites and the Egyptians were together in a similar place? They were slaves! They were being forced to build great structures and worked almost to death by the people that they are now claiming are their saviors. And Isaiah says, woe to those who go down to Egypt for help, who rely on horses. The problem isn't that they are rejoicing in the fact that they are being rescued from the oppression of the Assyrians. Who are they holding up as the source of that salvation? The Egyptians, the people coming to help them. When they have said, in these verses, he says, when the Lord stretches out his hand, those who help will stumble, those who are helped will fall. This is an extension of the Lord's will. And yet, the Israelites, whiffing on strike number 7, are not grasping the fact that this is not the world coming to help them. This is the Lord trying to help them. And they keep giving glory to worldly things. Again, I hope this sounds repetitive, these points that I keep making, because the same things keep happening. The Israelites are given so many chances to just say, thank you, God. You are the source of all the good that comes to us. We thank you we understand we have done wrong, but we thank you for the little good things that you give us. And every time they just look completely past the giant neon sign saying, this is from God, this is from God, and going, chariots, iron weapons, yes, this is what we need to solve all of our problems. Woe to those who go down to Egypt for help, who rely on horses, who trust in the chariots because they are many, who trust in horsemen because of their great strength. But who do they not look to?
The Holy One of God.
The Holy One of Israel, or seek help from the Lord. Yet he too, the Lord, is wise and can bring disaster. He does not take back his words. This is also in parallel with how the Assyrian king claimed, I do not take back my actions. Once I have set on destroying something, I carried that out fully. So too, it says, yet he too is wise and does not take back his words. The Lord's word is concrete. There is no flexibleness to it. Once the Lord has declared something, that is going to happen. And so it doesn't matter if help comes from somewhere else. He will rise up against that wicked nation, against those who help evildoers. The Egyptians are mere mortals and not God. Isaiah is making sure the Israelites know, yes, the Egyptians might be coming because of God's will. That doesn't make them holy. That doesn't make them higher than just men. They are men carrying out the Lord's will. Their horses are flesh and not the spirit. When the Lord stretches out his hand, those who help will stumble, and those who are helped will stumble. If the Lord wills that Israel be destroyed, if the Lord wills that the Assyrians be destroyed, if the Lord wills that the Egyptians be destroyed, it doesn't matter if the Israelites step in to help. It doesn't matter if one of those kingdoms steps in to help the other. It doesn't matter if a kingdom from far, far away who also follows the Lord's will, the Lord's word, comes in to help any of those nations. Once God has put his will into action, nothing is going to stop it. And those who are trying to help the wicked will stumble, and those who are being helped will stumble because they are the ones who were originally set to stumble. Those who help will stumble, those who are helped will fall, all will perish together. There is no stopping the will of the Lord, as the Israelites are finding out repeatedly again and again, because what are they doing? They are trying to go against the will of the Lord. They have so many opportunities to step off that path, and yet they just keep walking right towards it. In the opposite direction, mind you. So, now we're going to read just exactly how, I guess we're going to be intense, but how set the Lord is on his word. So let's read verses 4 through 5. Let's read verses 4 and 5.
For thus says the Lord to me, as the lion or the young lion growls over his prey, against which a band of shepherds is called out, and he will not be terrified at their voice, nor disturbed at their noise. So will the Lord of hosts come down to wage war on Mount Zion and on its hill. Like flying birds, so the Lord of hosts will protect Jerusalem. He will protect and deliver it. He will pass over and rescue it.
All right. So, as a lion growls over its prey. Lions are known for being pack hunters. Lions are known for working together to take down something that they're going to eat. And it is possible for a group of lions to be driven off from prey, but once a group of lions has made a kill and has something they're going to eat, they don't leave until they have eaten their fill. If another pack of lions tries to come through, if another animal tries to drive them off, they will stand their ground over whatever animal they just killed as if their life depends on it, because it does. So too will the Lord not be driven away from his kingdom. And though a whole band of shepherds, remember the story of David when he's a young boy. It says that when he watched over his sheep, he fought off lions, bears, all sorts of great fearsome beasts. And that is said to be like an impressive, this great thing that this young man is able to drive off a lion. And yet here, it says that a whole band of shepherds is called out to drive this lion off, but it is not frightened by their shouts or disturbed by their clamor. Because again, the Lord is immovable. The Lord's will is unable to be changed, is unable to be stopped. The Lord Almighty will come down to do battle on Mount Zion and on its heights. Like birds hovering overhead, the Lord Almighty will shield Jerusalem. Birds flying overhead just brings up a visual of nothing can make it go away. Have you ever tried to drive off birds that are circling overhead? Even in the modern day, it's not usually very viable. As someone who's done duck hunting in the past few years with my dad back when I was in Oklahoma, those suckers are hard to hit, even with something that's made to hit flying animals. And yet here, we see that these birds overhead that are circling are not just watching. Obviously, the Lord is always watching, and that is a good visual of how the Lord is always there, always sees what is happening, even is seeing more than you might see yourself. Just we know that hawks, that birds of prey, have amazing eyesight, that they can see things from hundreds of feet up. The Lord sees the whole picture. You might only see what's inside your little area, inside the walls. To use the example of Jerusalem, they only see the walls in front of them. They've only seen what they think is protecting them. But meanwhile, the Lord is soaring above and seeing everything that's being put into motion, everything that's happening, all at the same time. And also, it's always there. That just as birds cannot be driven away, if you see a bird flying overhead, you can't wave your hand and say, go away, and the bird will fly away. It'll always be there, ready to jump into action, to step in on the behalf of those that it protects. And so even though it says the Lord Almighty comes down to do battle on Mount Zion and on its heights, on a high place, as we've talked about, Jerusalem is located on a very high place, which is why it's so difficult to besiege. The Lord is still there in those high places because, like it says, he is a bird overhead. He can reach up to the greatest heights and to the lowest depths, as we talked about when Isaiah calls them the valley of prophecy. It's the lowest of the low places, and yet the Lord is still there also. Like birds hovering overhead, the Lord Almighty will shield Jerusalem. He will shield it and deliver it. He will pass over it and will rescue it. Interesting that pass over is in an extra set of parentheses. And again, when was the last time that the Lord passed over a home related to the Israelites?
Passover.
Was that?
Passover.
Passover. Where? In Egypt. During the plagues. The final plague, the death of the firstborn. How did the Israelites let the angel of death know to pass over their house?
They spread blood on the lintel of their home.
They painted blood over the door frame, the very top of their homes. And here we see that the Israelites, obeying a command from the Lord related to the Egyptian people, the Egyptian land, are spared from punishment, are spared from death, simply by following what the Lord says. And here we are on the opposite side of the spectrum. That the Israelites are almost running out of the city to throw themselves back into the arms of the Egyptians, saying, oh boy, you've come to save us. And yet we know that that's not what's going to happen if they carry that out. So Isaiah is very, 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 we're meaning to say, very deliberate. That's the word. Isaiah is very deliberate in using the phrase Passover because he knows exactly where the Israelites' minds are going to go to. Remember the last time you all were in Egypt? Remember what we did then? What's different now? And so, to finish up the chapter, Isaiah's made his point about, remember the last time we were with the Egyptians? He's made his point about how ferocious and how wildly the Lord fights for what he has set his will to. Isaiah makes one more plea at the end of the chapter to the Israelites. So let's read verses 6 through 9.
Return, you Israelites, to the one you have so greatly revolted against. For in that day every one of you will reject the idols of silver and gold your sinful hands have made. Assyria will fall by no human sword. A sword not of mortals will devour them. They will flee before the sword, and their young men will be put to forced labor. Their stronghold will fall because of terror at the sight of the battle standard. Their commanders will panic, declares the Lord, whose fire is in Zion, whose furnace is in Jerusalem.
Thank you. So, Isaiah makes one more plea. Return, you Israelites, to the one, capital O, one, you have so greatly revolted against. For in that day every one of you will reject the idols of silver, the gold your sinful hands have made. Even in the midst of the Exodus, what did the Israelites make as soon as Moses had gone up on the mountain to talk to the Lord? Golden calf. Moses, as soon as he's out of sight, they're like, cool, we need something to worship, because Moses guy isn't here to tell us what to do. And so, yeah, they melt down all their earrings, their bracelets, everything, and make this calf that's supposed to have some kind of meaningful importance, some spiritual guide that they can have. But it says, in the day of the Lord, whenever his punishment is finished, whenever he drives out all those that oppress you, you will reject the idols of silver and gold your sinful hands have made. And he assures them, Assyria will fall by no human sword. A sword not of mortals will devour them. Isaiah's reminding them, you can't fight the Assyrians. The Lord fights the Assyrians. He lets them know your enemies will not be slain by your own strength. You are not the one, even when you came into the land of Canaan, when the Israelites first came in, they fought battles, and at first things didn't go well, and then Moses, standing up on the hill, raised his arms above his head, and it says they were filled with the Spirit of the Lord. Even getting up to this point, the Israelites really haven't won a battle with their own hands, by their own swords. It has been conflict that has been guided by the Lord, because that was his will, was for the Israelites to get to the Promised Land. And now that they're here, they think that their swords are going to be enough. They think that, like we said, the iron, the chariots, the horsemen are what's going to deliver them from the evil of the Assyrians, when Isaiah says right here that Assyria will fall by no human sword. That the Lord, a sword not of mortals, will devour them. They will flee before the sword, and their young men will be put into forced labor. This empire that has made its name on conquering everything in its way, having next to no issues conquering the northern kingdom of Israel, driving the Egyptians back from what the lands they had conquered. A king who walks right up to the walls of the city and says, I am the punishment of God. I am the hand of the Lord. I am the rod that will strike you down. Even they will panic at the sight of the battle standard. Their commanders, the people who are supposed to keep all their soldiers in line, the people who are looked up to as how the battle's going, what they're supposed to do, will panic. Because, declares the Lord, whose fire is in Zion, and whose furnace is in Jerusalem, the source of the fire who is in Zion, comes from the furnace that is in Jerusalem. Isaiah is trying so hard to just take the Israelites by the head and point them at the right direction, saying, look, you are the children of God. In this city is the furnace from which the fire of the Lord emanates. And all you have to do is turn back to it and warm yourself by its glow, and you'll be spared from the fire that's going to scorch the earth, as we've read in previous chapters. And he paints this picture of the army that has spent so much time trying to take over their city, has been striking fear into their hearts. He says, they will flee at the sight of the sword of God. There will not even be conflict. That as soon as they see that the Lord is coming against them, they'll drop their weapons, and their great mighty heroes will turn and flee, because the Lord commands it. Again, I love Isaiah so much because he uses colorful language. That as we've been reading these descriptions that Isaiah has made to the Israelites, we're just reading about it secondhand after Isaiah has spoken to the people. And it gets me a little fired up. It gets my blood rushing a little bit. And yet, Isaiah stands before the Israelites and speaks these words straight from the mouth of God. And it just falls on deaf ears. It goes right in one ear and out the other. And as we move on to chapter 32, we're going to find out that yes, that the Israelites' ears have been closed. That their eyes have been shut to whatever light this is that the Lord is trying to give them. But there is a better time coming. And here as we move into verse 32, we're going to hear, as Isaiah talks about the kingdom of righteousness. And again, now we switch. Isaiah goes often back and forth from speaking about what is present and then goes into prophecy. Talks about what is to come if the Israelites heed his words. So, let's read in chapter 32. Let's read verse 1 and let's go through, actually, just to start, verses 1 and 2.
Behold, the king will reign righteously, and princes will rule justly. Each will be like a refuge from the wind, a shelter from the storm. Like streams of water in a dry country, like a shade of a huge rock in a parched land.
Thank you. So, starting off is good news. Isaiah says, see, a king will reign in righteousness, and rulers will rule with justice. Something that is not happening right now. Isaiah has chastised the rulers and the advisors to the rulers of Judah, has talked about their hearts are set on the wrong thing. You'll hear this in our sing service today, but Isaiah even says, woe to you who make unjust laws, who take advantage of the needy. We know that the rulers of the land right now are more self-serving than they are a servant of others. And so Isaiah sets up a contrast right away when he says, a king will reign in righteousness, and rulers will rule with justice. Each one will be like a shelter from the wind and a refuge from the storm, like streams of water in the desert and a shadow of a great rock in a thirsty land. They won't just be a good enough leader. It won't be someone who keeps things on a decent track. We're not prospering, but we're not really suffering. They will be like a stream of water in a desert. Something that is not commonly seen. A shadow of a great rock in a thirsty land. It makes me think of Jonah, when he's sitting there waiting for Nineveh to be destroyed, and the Lord causes a great plant to grow up and to give him shade, because the sun was beating down. That there is one who's coming that will give relief to those who live in a place where there is great need. And we know from reading the Bible that after Isaiah's time as prophet, after King Hezekiah, after all the King Ahaz, all of those that come, that there will be good kings in the time of the kingdom of Israel. But then also, there are very much allusions to who is the final king that is coming. Jesus. That Jesus comes as one who reigns in righteousness and rules with justice because he is the Lord come down to earth. He doesn't bring literal streams of water, but he brings streams of mercy, streams of grace. That those who need to hear the word of the Lord most can come to him and drink deeply from the Spirit that he offers. And so as a result of this great king coming, let's go ahead and read verses 3 through 8. Let's read verses 3 through 8.
The eyes of those who see will not be dim, and the ears of those who hear will listen. Also the heart of the rash will understand knowledge, and the tongue of the stammers will be ready to speak plainly. The foolish person will no longer be called generous, nor the miser said to be bountiful, for the foolish person will speak foolishness, and his heart will work iniquity. The practice ungodliness, to utter error against the Lord, to keep the hungry unsatisfied, and he will cause the drink of the thirsty to fail. Also the schemes of the schemer are evil. He devises wicked plans to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speaks justice. But a generous man devises generous things, and by generosity he shall stand.
Thank you. So, in the time of that king coming, we've just talked about how Isaiah's words fall on deaf ears, that things that should be obvious to the Israelites, that this is the Lord's will, are just being completely looked over. And yet when the King of righteousness comes, the eyes of those who see will no longer be closed, and the ears of those who hear will listen. No longer will the people be ignorant because of humanly misguidings, that the Lord himself will open their eyes. No longer will the fool be called noble, nor the scoundrel be highly respected. In this time, how we talk about the leaders of Israel are more self-serving. That as the Assyrians come to attack, the leaders, instead of trying to find an avenue from which to save their own people, it says one of the leaders is up on a hill trying to carve a good tomb for himself so that he can be buried in a higher place. Nor the scoundrel be highly respected. Oftentimes it says, for fools speak folly, their hearts are bent on evil. They practice ungodliness and spread error concerning the Lord. In these times that sometimes we see that, deceivers can get ahead in life. That sometimes someone can get to the top of the hill by lying, stealing, and cheating. And then it says, when the day of the King of righteousness comes, the fool will no longer be called noble. The scoundrel will be highly respected. And why is that? Because the people will see and will understand this is foolishness. That we've been duped, we've been tricked, but no more. That though they practice ungodliness and spread error concerning the Lord, no longer will they be called noble, and no longer will they be respected. Because scoundrels use wicked methods, and they make up evil schemes to destroy the poor with lies, even when the plea of the needy is just. But the noble make noble plans, and by noble deeds they stand. Those who stop to help the needy, those who have pure intentions, are lifted up because of their own merits. They won't need to cheat to get ahead. They won't need to take shortcuts. They will be seen for exactly what they are, noble leaders. And again, Isaiah, kind of what's led me to what we're going to talk about in the end of our song service this morning, is Isaiah in almost every single couple chapters that we've studied so far has made the point of the needy are not being helped. The poor are being oppressed. Those who should get the smallest of kindnesses are not even being shown that. And that, as we talked about, woe to those who make oppressive laws, woe to those who take advantage of the needy. The wicked spread error concerning the Lord, the hungry they leave empty, and from the thirsty they withhold water. Why? There's not a purpose to it. They just want more for themselves. They use wicked methods and they make up evil schemes to destroy the poor with lies, even when the plea of the needy is just. But again, noble make noble plans, and by noble deeds they are lifted up. Any other thoughts about the kingdom of righteousness? Yeah.
Well, we're in it right now. You know, so it's our privilege to help those in need.
I would go further into that, but that'd be stepping on my toes for the song service this morning. So I'll keep that for a little bit. But yeah. Yep.
There's an organization in Sun Prairie that's to help women in need, you know, and it's called Shelter from the Storm.
Mm. Yeah. We just finished election week, y'all. And at this time, there is no more of a rhetoric for it's us versus them. That the people who voted for this person are doing good, and then if you voted for the other person, you're doing bad. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Every time I start getting too deep into all this election stuff, I just have to think about
God is in control.
God is in control. I personally, my belief is that we should support leaders who want to help those who are in need. I'm not going to get into should Christians actually vote, should Christians not vote.
Yeah.
That's
No.
way, way beyond the point. The point that we should be making is that we should want to uplift those who are helping. Regardless
We can
of
do that
party.
individually, it doesn't have to be through an organization that 9 times out of 10,
Yeah.
the money doesn't even go to the poor.
It's
I
so
agree.
disappointing to see people being encouraged to vote blue or vote red, as if every single aspect of our side of things is the right thing. Support and lift up the leaders who help those in need. That is being a Christian leader, is helping those who are in need. Not mandating everyone to go to church. Not putting in place laws that force certain people to do this, certain people to do that. Lift up those that help. That in their hearts want things to be better. That's all I'm going to say on that political branch there. Because fools speak folly. But the noble deeds stand by their noble actions. Got that? So, finishing up our chapter here, let's read verses 9 through, let's go ahead and, I'll finish this up with verses 9 through 15. You women who are so complacent, rise up and listen to me. You daughters who feel secure, hear what I have to say. In little more than a year, you who feel secure will tremble. The grape harvest will fail, and the harvest of fruit will not come. Tremble, you complacent women. Shudder, you daughters who feel secure. Strip off your fine clothes and wrap yourselves in rags. Beat your breasts for the pleasant fields, for the fruitful vines, and for the land of my people, a land overgrown with thorns and briars. Yes, mourn for all houses of merriment, and for this city of revelry. The fortress will be abandoned, the noisy city deserted. Citadel and watchtower will become a wasteland forever, the delight of donkeys, a pasture for flocks, till the Spirit is poured on us from on high, and the desert becomes a fertile field, and the fertile field seems like a forest. Here we see that Isaiah makes a plea to the women of Israel. Not often do the prophets specifically speak out to the women of their country. But what's the problem here? What is Isaiah speaking out against specifically? Complacency. You women who are so complacent, you daughters who feel secure. We know that the entire city suffers from this. And yet why does Isaiah speak to the women of Israel? Because part of their role is to, when things get bad, to take their men by the ear and say, hey, there's a problem. They're supposed to light a fire under the men's butts to say, hey, fix this. And yet, here we see that even the women of Israel are complacent. That he says, strip off your fine clothes and wrap yourselves in rags. They're so okay with the current state of things that they don't feel like anything bad can happen. And yet, Isaiah describes the land of my people, a land overgrown with thorns and briars. Yet, the Israelites look past these things that are growing up. They cannot see that, yeah, thorns and briars means fruit ain't gonna grow here. And so Isaiah has tried speaking to the leaders. He's tried speaking to the general public to turn things around. And now he's saying, women, it's time to rise up and let the Israelites know exactly how bad this is. He says, yeah, throw off your complacency, strip off your fine clothes, and wrap yourselves in rags. For there will come a time. There will come a time when the grape harvest will fail and the harvest of fruit will not come. In little more than a year, he even puts a timetable through it. Puts a timetable to it. In less than a year, you who feel secure, you who think that things are going great, will be trembling. Yeah, that the fruit harvest will not come. And he repeats himself, tremble, you complacent women, shudder, you daughters who feel secure. It says the time is now. There's no need to wait for the famine to come, yeah.
I like that he includes the women and specifically speaks to them because he's saying all my people are responsible.
Hmm?
Not just the leaders, who happen to be men, women, you're also just as responsible and here's your role. Here's what you need to be doing and not be complacent too. Which speaks to now too.
Hmm?
We all have that role to do.
Yeah.
Responsibility.
And again, Isaiah and his empty buildings. The fortress will be abandoned, the noisy city deserted. Citadel and watchtower will become a wasteland forever. The delight of donkeys, a pasture for flocks. No longer will it even be able to keep out sheep. It'll be so torn down, it'll be so open that flocks of donkeys and sheep will just be able to walk on through. Citadels, watchtowers, things meant to keep out everything. And yet here we are, just leading our animals through it, because it will be so completely torn down. Mourn for the house of merriment and for the city of revelry. Because until the Spirit is poured on us from on high, it will be this way. But when the Spirit is poured on us, when things turn around, once the Israelites turn back to the Lord, the desert will become a fertile field, and the fertile field will seem like a forest. It'll be so grown, it will be so vast. You often think about can't see the forest for the trees. The fertile field will be so great that it'll almost obscure vision. And so that's where our study cuts off today. That when everyone partakes in their role, as he calls the women to kick everyone into gear, to not be complacent anymore with the way things are going, when we all fulfill our role as we are called to do, a desert will become a fertile field. That those whose ears have been closed will listen. Their eyes will be open to the word of the Lord, and in that day, a fertile field, a place where all people turn to the Lord. That where we try and grow seeds, there will grow a forest. The seed will take, and the seed will be fruitful. So as we close up, there's my timer. Let's make sure we're fulfilling the role that the Lord set before us. Thank you all for class. Quick announcement. I'll make another one at the end of services. But remember, the young adults, we're staying after church today. We're gonna have a church cleaning day, and then we're gonna go eat at Culver's. So that'll be our fellowship event for the month. So come ready to clean and to have good food. But apparently no curd burgers. Something about Baxter and being a food of exception or something. I don't know.